Imagine a modern multinational tech giant. Like, let's say they are worth $2 trillion.
Right. A behemoth.
Exactly. They have the most aggressive legal team on Earth, seemingly infinite cash reserves, a total monopoly on their market,
Yeah.
and server farms that literally span continents.
They're everywhere. You can't escape them.
Yeah. And by all conventional logic, right,
Yeah.
by every single metric we are taught to value in modern business and governance, they are invincible.
I mean, they're the definition of too big to fail.
Too big to fail. But what if I told you that exact size, the very weight they use to intimidate regulators and, crush their competitors, is mathematically guaranteed to destroy them?
Not just eventually either.
Right. Not eventually. Not by chance, but by design. So today, we are looking at an ancient architectural blueprint that proposes that giant, hum-up-heavy systems don't just fall. They are actually engineered by the laws of the universe to, well, eat themselves.
It completely upends how we measure strength.
Yeah.
I mean, we are so conditioned to view disasters as having a single visible point of failure,
Oh, totally. Like a bridge collapsing.
Exactly. A bridge collapses and the inspector points to one rusted rivet. Or a company goes under and the analysts point to, like, one bad quarterly earnings report.
We really want the cause of death to be simple. We want a clean autopsy.
We do. But when you step into the world of systemic power, institutional momentum, and human governance, that kind of simple physical stress test becomes completely useless.
It's just too complex.
Yeah, the landscape is murky, and to navigate it, you really need a different kind of diagnostic tool.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. So welcome to the show. Today, we are conducting what I can only really describe as a systemic audit of power.
I love that framing.
Thanks. And we're doing this specifically for you, the listener. Because whether you are navigating the shadow of a global corporate monopoly, or watching geopolitical superpowers posture on the daily news, or honestly, just trying to survive a massive, bloated bureaucracy in your own industry.
Which I think most of us are.
Right. You are interacting with these exact forces every single day.
And without the right framework, those forces can feel overwhelming, insurmountable even.
Exactly. So we're focusing entirely on a single, incredibly dense source today. We're looking at excerpts from J.R. Ahmed's interpretation of Surah 105. It's a chapter from the Quran traditionally known as Al-Fil.
A very famous text.
Super famous. Now, Ahmed's work here is titled The Architecture of Failed Force. And our goal today is to strip away the historical myths, all the inherited traditions, and the fables you might have heard about this text.
Because the traditional reading is very literal.
Right. Instead of a literal story about an ancient king, a marching army, and a giant animal walking through the desert, Ahmed frames this as a clinical, awe-inspiring blueprint of architectural justice.
It is a really radical departure from the conventional reading. I mean, when you look at Ahmed's thesis and you strip away the historical mythos, what he argues is left behind is an empirical formula.
Yeah, it's practically math.
It is. It reads less like theology and way more like a physics textbook for civilizations.
That is exactly what hooked me. You know me, I lean heavily into the empiricist side of things. I want to see the math. I want to see the cause and effect.
You want the structural breakdown.
Always. And what fascinated me in these notes is Ahmed's central theme. He outlines the rise of a massive structural force and its inevitable collision with the unseen calculus of the universe.
The unseen calculus, it gives you chills.
It really does. According to this framework, we are talking about the sheer physics of top-heavy systems and the deadly momentum of institutional debt.
And as someone who approaches these texts from a rationalist perspective, what I find so compelling is that Ahmed doesn't present the universe as an angry, arbitrary punisher.
Right. There's no guy in the sky throwing lightning bolts.
Exactly. No lightning bolts.
Yeah.
Instead, the universe operates as an unalterable accounting system. He teases out this idea that the text is a diagnostic metaphor for any entity, whether that's an empire, a multinational monopoly, or a military superpower.
Any system that relies on blunt physical...
Yes, relying on blunt mass while possessing fundamentally flawed logic.
Okay. Let's unpack this. Because before we can understand how a massive system collapses, we first have to accurately define what the system actually is.
Indeed, the definition.
Right. We have to look at the foundational code of its name. And the source material does something incredible with the title of this chapter, Al-Fil.
Yeah, traditionally, as the notes point out, Al-Fil is simply translated as the elephant.
Just the animal.
Just the animal. For centuries, people have read this as a literal historical account of a specific army bringing an elephant to destroy a sanctuary in antiquity.
Which is an epic story, but maybe misses the deeper point.
According to Ahmed, absolutely. He argues that if we adhere strictly to the text as a master architectural blueprint, we have to strip back that simple translation. We need to look at its classical Arabic root, which is SYL.
And the root is where this entire diagnostic metaphor lives.
Precisely. Let's look at how classical Arabic functions. It relies on these three-letter consonant roots to build conceptual families.
Like a linguistic DNA.
Great way to put it. And this specific root, FYL, carries a fascinating, almost paradoxical dual meaning. On one hand, it refers to something of immense physical volume, massive weight, heavy, cumbersome bulk.
Okay, so sheer physical displacement, just huge.
Yes, huge. But the second meaning of the root, and this is the absolute crux of Ahmed's interpretation, is to have severely defective judgment.
Wait, really?
Yeah, to be weak-minded, to be easily led astray or prone to disastrously failing opinions. In fact, in classical Arabic, a person who was known for constantly making terrible unforced errors in judgment was actually called a fa'il.
Wait, hold on. So the root word means physically massive and intellectually defective at the exact same time?
It does. It defines a very specific state of being. Immense physical weight combined with defective maneuverability and judgment.
That is wild. But what about the elephant? I thought Al-Fil literally meant the animal. Are you saying the word doesn't actually mean a pachyderm at all?
This is where Ahmed's linguistic analysis gets really interesting. He points out that the animal, the elephant, was actually named after this conceptual root. It wasn't the other way around.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Right. The people of that region and time, they looked at this creature, they saw the ultimate biological manifestation of heavy, cumbersome mass, and they applied the root FYL to it.
That completely flips the script. So Ahmed is arguing the text isn't talking about a literal animal walking through the desert at all.
No, not essentially.
It is defining a highly specific sociological and structural condition.
Exactly. When Ahmed analyzes the phrase companions of the massive structural force, Al-Fil, he claims the text is asking the human mind to observe a timeless archetype.
An archetype that repeats throughout history.
Yes. This isn't a historical anomaly. This is a society, a faction, or, a corporate entity defined by its heavy, cumbersome power and its completely defective strategy.
Let me throw an analogy at you, because the physics of this are just fascinating to me. Let's go back to that modern multinational tech monopoly I mentioned at the start.
Let's do it.
We all know one. It has billions of dollars in cash reserves, massive physical servo farms across the globe, thousands of employees, and lobbyists in every capital.
Right.
That is the physical bulk. It is undeniably massive. But then its leadership starts making decisions entirely detached from objective reality or human ethics.
They lose the plot.
Completely. They chase short-term algorithmic engagement over the mental health of their users. They alienate their core demographic to appease shareholders. Their internal culture becomes toxic. Their judgment is entirely defective.
The Fayol condition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So isn't Ahmed's thesis essentially saying that the bigger the physical footprint of a flawed strategy, the larger the target it paints on its own back?
That is exactly what Ahmed calls the paradox of the root. His framework illustrates that a society or an institution can possess immense physical weight while simultaneously possessing defective, weak judgment.
It's a fatal combination.
It really is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, an organization without an ethical compass is structurally incapacitated. Its very size, which it views as its ultimate protection, is actually what makes it a highly vulnerable, lumbering target for the laws of nature.
I have to push back on that a little, though.
Sure, go ahead.
In the real world, doesn't size actually protect you?
Really?
Look at too big to fail banks. Look at massive political regimes. They seem to use their mass as a shield quite effectively.
It definitely looks that way in the short term.
Right. They equate their sheer size with permanent success. They think, we have the most money, the biggest army, the largest market share, therefore we are immune to accountability.
And that exact mindset is what Ahmed diagnoses as technological hubris. They believe their massive, superior physical force can successfully dismantle the structural anchors of the world.
They think they're above the law.
They think their mass shields them from the rules of the universe. But Ahmed's framework argues that this is a fundamental miscalculation of how universal mechanics operate.
The math is wrong.
Exactly. According to his interpretation, the universe does not respect brute force that lacks moral equilibrium. The mass might delay the collapse, but it actually guarantees the severity of the collapse.
Okay, so that sets up the diagnostic phase really well. We've defined the nature of this massive structural force. It's huge, it's arrogant, and its judgment is terrible.
A dangerous mix.
But how does this translate into action? How does a structurally heavy, morally defective system actually operate in the real world? And more importantly, what is the universe's immediate mechanical response to it?
To answer that, Ahmed's source material dives into the first two verses of the chapter, specifically examining the Arabic word kaid.
Cade. Okay.
Now, traditionally, this is translated simply as their plot or their plan, but systemically and literally, kaid is a hidden, carefully woven trap. It represents a complex, long-term strategy designed to manipulate or control a situation.
So we aren't just talking about a CEO making a bad business decision or a politician making a gaffe.
No.
We are talking about engineered exploitation.
Yes. In the context of human governance and institutional power, Ahmed interprets kaid as deceptive legislation, structural barriers, or corporate monopolies, specifically engineered by the elite to keep the public subservient.
Wow.
It's the use of intimidation and physical weight to exploit vulnerable demographics. The massive system relies entirely on its bulk to enforce dominance, falsely believing it can trample human rights without triggering a reaction.
But the physics of oppression, if we follow this logic, dictate that this is impossible. You cannot build a structure on exploitation without it becoming inherently unstable.
It defies physics.
It does. I look at this as the law of institutional lifespan. A society or an organization built on oppression naturally becomes structurally brittle. It becomes incredibly top-heavy.
Like an inverted pyramid.
Yes. All the resources, all the wealth, all the power are sucked up to the top just to maintain the illusion of control, leaving the foundation starving, hollow, and weak.
And this is where Ahmed introduces a concept he calls the divergence protocol.
The divergence protocol. That sounds intense.
It is. His interpretation of the text suggests that when an institutional plot, this massive kaid, violates baseline ethical laws, the universe does not passively absorb the blow.
It pushes back.
It automatically redirects the energy of that plot inward.
Okay, here is where it gets really interesting. You're saying the massive, over-engineered complexity of the corrupt organization actually becomes the very engine of its own frustration.
Precisely. Ahmed looks at the text's use of the word tachel to describe what happens to their plot.
Tachel. Let's break that down.
Traditionally, this is translated as misguidance or astray. But if you look at the root, it signifies losing a trail, vanishing into the ground, or a resource being scattered unproductively.
Utter failure. Total waste of energy.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Ahmed argues this is the natural law of the universe causing massive investments in corruption to simply drop out of functional realization.
It just fizzles out.
The energy is expended, the money is spent, the troops are deployed, but the intended dominance is never achieved. The plot vanishes into the ground.
I call this institutional drag.
Oh, I like that. Institutional drag.
Yeah, let's go back to our corporate analogy. Imagine that massive tech corporation decides to spend $20 billion on a hostile takeover of an innovative rival simply to crush them and cement their monopoly.
A classic corporate move.
Right. That takeover is their kaid, their woven trap. But because the strategy is rooted in greed and defective judgment, the FYL root Ahmed's framework suggests the universe triggers the divergence protocol.
So what does that look like mechanically?
Well, suddenly, the internal bureaucracy required to integrate the two companies becomes a nightmare.
Constant meetings, clashing systems.
Exactly. The legal fees skyrocket due to antitrust investigations. The public backlash destroys their brand equity. And worst of all, the brilliant engineers from the acquired company all quit in protest because the internal culture is toxic.
Which means the core asset they tried to acquire is just gone.
Exactly. They spent $20 billion, and all that massive energy is scattered into the ground. It vanishes. Totzel. The energy was spent, but the objective was completely lost.
And Ahmed argues this isn't just bad luck. It is mathematically forced into total disorientation.
It's the system balancing itself.
The overarching architecture of the universe ensures that brute force, without moral equilibrium, cannot maintain long-term stability. The complexity they built to trap others becomes the labyrinth they themselves cannot escape.
It's exhausting just thinking about it. They are basically running on a treadmill that is slowly catching fire.
That's a very vivid image.
But wait, I have to challenge this again. The universe doesn't just let the giant tire itself out, does it?
No, it doesn't.
According to the outline of Ahmed's thesis, it's not just a passive resistance where the system simply wastes energy, the environment actively counterattacks.
Right.
And this is the part of the source material that genuinely gave me chills. Because the obvious question is, how does a universe dismantle a giant without using a giant army?
That is the pivotal transition in the text. According to Ahmed, the universe relies on the unbending law of cause and effect,
Just pure physics.
pure mechanics. There is no magical intervention required, no suspension of natural laws. The text in verses 3 and 4 describes the deployment of highly agile, high-velocity microforces against the unaligned giant.
The unseen calculus, no giant laser beams from the sky, just the relentless compounding math of consequences.
Exactly. Ahmed breaks down the verse's description of dispatching Aaron a Babel.
Okay, a hair in a bubble.
Now, traditionally, this is translated as flocks of birds. And again, people have historically read this as literal birds dropping literal stones.
Right, the Sunday school version.
Yeah. But let's look at the systemic breakdown Ahmed provides.
Yeah.
Aaron, or birds, literally refers to an entity in rapid flight,
Fast moving.
very fast. It is characterized by elevation, speed, and a distinct trajectory through space. Systemically, Ahmed interprets this as trajectories of action.
Trajectories of action, meaning every human decision, every institutional policy has a trajectory.
Yes. Every choice, every oppressive policy, every fraudulent transaction possesses an attached trajectory that cannot be detached from its source.
It has a flight path.
The plot is launched, it takes flight, but because Ahmed views the universe as a closed moral system, that trajectory must eventually return to its origin.
It's the boomerang effect, but at terminal velocity.
That's a really good way to put it, terminal velocity boomerang. And Ahmed notes that the text pairs a gran with a bobble.
Okay, what does a bobble mean?
A bobble means sequential lines, distinct clusters, or waves following one after another.
Like a swarm.
Yes. Sociologically, we are talking about relentless, successive waves of compounding consequences. It is cascading crises hitting the failing establishment from multiple angles simultaneously.
So let's look at the contrast here because it's brilliant. The massive structure, the Adab Aflal, is slow, lumbering, and incredibly top-heavy. Its mass makes it sluggish.
It can't pivot.
It can't pivot at all. But the universe's counteroffensive, the Iran Babel, is lightweight, hyper-agile, and hits in continuous rapid-fire waves. The giant simply cannot outmaneuver it. It's the mechanics of asymmetric warfare.
It is entirely asymmetric.
Yeah.
And what are these waves delivering? Ahmed points out that the text says the giant is pelted with Ajaratin min Sijjil.
Ajaratin min Sijjil, okay.
Traditionally, this is translated as stones of baked clay. But again, Ahmed dives into the linguistic depths here, and it is profound. Ajara means hard, unyielding physical impact.
So stones, but as a metaphor.
Right. It signifies the exact point in time where delayed consequences transition from abstract risk into direct, crushing physical realities on the ground.
The delayed momentum finally hits the wall.
Yes. But the word Sijjil is the key to Ahmed's entire thesis. It comes from the root Sijjil, which means a written scroll, a legal ledger, or an official record of accounting.
The unalterable ledger. I absolutely love this concept.
It's incredible.
So, if we follow Ahmed's framework, the multinational monopoly isn't destroyed by a bigger, more evil monopoly. It's destroyed by its own accounting ledger.
That is the core metaphor. Ahmed argues that the universe takes the recorded evidence of the elite's corruption, their structural debts, their hidden choices, their exploitation, and materializes that ledger into hard, destructive crises. The debt becomes physical.
I really want to dig into the how of this. How does an abstract concept like corruption turn into a physical stone that destroys an empire?
That's a good question.
Because it sounds poetic, but how does it actually work mechanically? I want to make sure you, the listener, can really map this onto the real world.
Ahmed suggests it works through natural socioeconomic mechanisms. Let's look at a historical example. If a government continually prints money to fund an oppressive regime or an unnecessary war,
We've seen that a million times.
the cade, the hidden trap, is the financial manipulation. The Aaron of Babel are the rapid cascading market reactions, investors pulling out, supply chain stalling, black markets forming.
Right. The waves of consequences.
And the Ejarten min Sijil, the hard stones from the ledger, is the sudden crushing reality of hyperinflation.
Oh.
The abstract debt recorded in the system's ledger suddenly materializes as a physical inability for citizens to buy bread. The math finally demands to be paid in physical suffering, And that suffering triggers a structural collapse.
Or, bringing it back to a corporate level, what if an institution relies on silencing whistleblowers and covering up internal abuse to maintain its stock price?
According to Ahmed's framework, the ledger records every silenced voice. The risk is logged.
Right. And for a while, the massive bulk of the company's PR department and legal team suppresses it. They use their mask.
They think they're safe.
But the trajectory is in flight. And when it returns, the waves of consequences, the bubble return as investigative journalism breaking the story, social media outrage compounding it, and mass consumer boycotts.
It hits from everywhere all at once.
Exactly. And the hard stones, the Sijjil, that's the institutional paralysis. The stock price plummeting, the class action lawsuits, and the literal emptying of their boardrooms. The slow, lumbering bulk of the elite simply cannot outmaneuver the rapid return of its own structural debts.
Ahmed posits that it's a mathematical certainty. You can fake your public relations, you can manipulate your quarterly earnings, but you cannot fake the universe's accounting system.
The math always catches up.
Every action is recorded in the Sijjil, and when the bill comes due, it doesn't come as an invoice in the mail. It comes as a relentless pelting of physical reality that shatters the brittle foundation of the empire.
It's terrifying, honestly, because we're so used to thinking that we can outrun our mistakes if we just get big enough or rich enough.
That's the delusion of the file.
Exactly. But this text, at least in Ahmed's interpretation, says that your size is actually the gravity that pulls the consequences back to you faster.
Which brings us to the final resulting state of this systemic audit. The cascading waves of consequences have struck the massive structure.
The ledger is balanced.
The overarching architecture has deployed its agents, the ledgers have balanced. What is left?
Verse 5 gives us the aftermath. And it is an incredibly vivid, chilling image.
The phrase used in the text is afin makul.
Afin maku.
Traditionally, this is translated as eaten straw. Let's break down Ahmed's architectural diagnosis here. Often represents dry stalks of grain, chaff, or protective leaves that have been entirely stripped of their nutritious seed.
So the useful part is gone.
Yes, and makul means consumed, chewed, or digested.
So a hollowed out, fragile husk, eaten straw.
Yes. Ahmed views this as the ultimate architectural diagnosis of a society or an institution that has exhausted its moral capital.
It's spiritually bankrupt.
When a system prioritizes material accumulation and brute dominance over objective justice, it undergoes a process of severe internal decay. It becomes an institution that has lost all its human capital, all internal trust, and all structural vitality.
I look at this as the law of structural liquidation.
Structural liquidation, that's a powerful term.
The massive entity is consumed from within. The imposing cosmetic exterior might remain for a brief moment. The skyscrapers are still standing. The massive corporate logos are still glowing on the side of the building. The military uniforms still look sharp, but the core is entirely destroyed.
It's a facade.
A complete facade. It's been hollowed out by the friction of its own consequences.
It maintains the superficial illusion of power on the outside, but it is completely bankrupt, depleted, and structurally dead on the inside.
We see this all the time. Think of massive corporate bankruptcies like Enron or Blockbuster.
Oh, absolutely.
For a while, they were the absolute definition of a massive structural force. They relied on their sheer bulk to crush competitors and manipulate the market.
Nobody thought they could fall.
Nobody. But their judgment, their internal culture was entirely defective. It was the FYL route in action.
The paradox again?
Yeah. The market shifted, ethical breaches compounded, the Tadel, the ledger, demanded payment, and today they are Afin Makul, a cautionary tale, a logo on a retro t-shirt, chewed up straw.
The buildings remain, but the entity is dead. Ahmed argues that this text is a historical and mathematical warning that weight without equity leads to absolute ruin.
But this raises a massive question for me, and it's something I imagine you, the listener, might be thinking too.
Okay, what is it?
Why does the universe operate this way? Why is this divergence protocol, this brutal structural liquidation, necessary? I mean, it seems incredibly destructive. Whole economies can collapse when these massive structures fall.
That is a crucial point, and Ahmed addresses it directly. He doesn't frame this destruction as malicious. He calls it a cosmic cleanup mechanism.
A cleanup mechanism, so it's functional.
Exactly. According to Ahmed, this law is functionally necessary to prevent civilian collapse across the wider world.
Like a quarantine.
Similar, yeah. If massive, toxic, non-functional power structures were allowed to expand indefinitely without consequence, they would consume the baseline functionality of life itself. They would deplete all resources and crush all human agency.
So they have to be stopped.
Therefore, they must be completely liquidated by the environment they attempted to dominate in order to maintain the baseline laws of ethics and universal methodology.
Okay, I see. It's like the immune system of reality.
Oh, I like that. The
Yeah.
immune system.
Yeah. When a virus, in this case, an exploitative monopoly, a corrupt political regime, or an arrogant empire becomes too large and threatens to kill the host, the environment naturally deploys these highly agile microforces to break the virus down into harmless, chewed-up debris.
White blood cells.
Exactly. It's not a punishment, it's biological preservation on a cosmic scale.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize Ahmed's thesis. The universe cleans up its own operating system. It neutralizes the threat to preserve the whole.
Okay, let's synthesize this journey we've been on because the density of Ahmed's source material is just incredible.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. So we started by redefining the massive structural force through the root FYL, diagnosing the paradox of an entity having immense physical weight but entirely defective, weak judgment.
Lumbering giant.
Right. We saw how this delusion of material mass leads them to weave complex traps, the cade, to oppress and exploit others.
But then we explored the mechanics of the divergence protocol, which forces those oppressive schemes to turn inward, scattering their energy into the ground in total failure. Dallas.
Then the unseen calculus kicks in. The unalterable accounting ledger of the universe, the Sijjil, takes their abstract structural debt and materializes their hidden corruption into hard, physical reality.
It's the stones.
The stones. Relentless waves of consequences, the air in a bubble, the trajectories of their own actions pelt the system.
And finally, this asymmetric friction reduces the arrogant giant to a fragile, hollow husk consumed from within.
Eaten straw.
Exactly. Ahmed's framework reiterates that relying on heavy, arrogant momentum to crush objective truth is not just bad morals, it is a mathematically doomed strategy. It is guaranteed to be neutralized by the precise asymmetric mechanics of the universe.
It is the ultimate calculus of hubris. And bringing it back to you, the listener, as you navigate your week, I encourage you to look at the massive structural forces in your own world through this lens.
It changes how you see the news, doesn't it?
It really does. Whether it's the posturing in global politics, the monopolistic behavior in economics, or even just a toxic, bloated bureaucracy in your own workplace, don't look at them with fear of their sheer size.
Size is just bulk.
Right. Look at them with the clinical understanding that, according to this framework, they are subject to an unyielding environmental physics. Their size is not their shield, it is their vulnerability.
They are operating on a defective premise, and the ledger is always recording.
Always. Which brings me to a final, slightly provocative thought I want to leave you with. Something to mull over on your commute or while you're making dinner tonight.
Let's hear it.
We've talked extensively about how the universe, in Ahmed's view, operates as a flawless, inescapable ledger that eventually materializes hidden corruption into hard, physical reality to balance the books of empires. But if that law applies to nations and monopolies, how are you auditing the structural debts in your own life?
Ooh, that's a good question.
How are you auditing the internal culture of your own organization or the ethical foundation of your own decisions before the universe decides to balance the books for you?
Because if the theory holds, the trajectories always return.
Exactly. You don't want to find out that your foundation was built on chewed-up straw only after the skyscraper starts to lean.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of power. We'll catch you next time.